Welcome back to Factor 85 Labs. Today we're going to talk about first aid a little bit more, but we're going to talk about this box. So today I want to talk about this box and about getting first aid supplies to build first aid kits or to stock up on first aid supplies so that you have what you need on hand at home. This box is our extra first aid things. Most everything is in this box. I've tried to collect things from where they were scattered around and condense them into just a few boxes, and this is most of our extra things. So what's in here is things like extra bandages, they're in a bag, gauze, all sorts of extra stuff. There's also some things in this box that I don't use all the time that I also don't have in a first aid kit. So things like stethoscopes and blood pressure cuffs, things like that. And then down at the bottom I've got things that I don't need to access a lot. I've got suture removal kits and stuff like that. I've got a box of sutures and stuff that I probably am not going to use or need, and so those are just sort of put away. So I wanted just to talk for a few minutes about getting first aid stuff and some of my tips on how to put together first aid kits, where to get the things to put together a first aid kit, how to buy those things, and how to do it in a way to save yourself a little bit of time and money. First thing is, don't exceed your abilities. You don't need a whole lot of first aid equipment just because someone tells you that you need it. Get the training first, or buy the things that you are going to be trained to use. That can save you a lot of money if you're looking at building up a little stockpile of stuff at home to have available when you need it. So the next thing, when you're getting first aid kits, don't buy pre-made first aid kits. The reason for that is I can avoid useless items, things in a kit that I'm not going to need or use. I can avoid cheap products. Sometimes in those pre-made kits you end up getting a lot of extra pieces of cheap plastic band-aids, stuff like that, that is not high quality, but you're just paying for extra pieces in your 175 piece first aid kit. And it could be cheaper overall to build your own first aid kits. The next thing is to buy first aid stuff in bulk. And I know that doesn't sound like it would be cheaper at first, but if you're looking at building first aid kits for your car, for your home, for your backpack, for your diaper bag, and you're looking at all of this, rather than buying a separate first aid kit for each of those or buying pieces and doing that one at a time, buy things in bulk. You'll save a lot of money if you buy a big pack of something that you can separate out into the first aid kits. These are compression dressings, kind of like Israeli bandages, and it's cheaper for me to buy this package of them. I mean, there's like 6 of them that was in this bag. They were about half the price if I bought 6 at a time than if I only bought 1. So yes, I spent more overall, but now I can replace the old ones in all of my first aid kits instead of buying just 1 at a time for each kit. The next thing is to shop and look for good prices. You're not always going to get the best price on first aid stuff shopping from first aid places or medical equipment places. One of the best places you can look when you're building first aid kits is Amazon. You can buy most of this type of stuff. Large packages of gauze or bandages. Another place to look where you might not think to look for first aid stuff is at like your local feed store, farm supply store, or veterinary store. So this is for one of my recent shopping trips when I went to buy dog food. I bought a bunch of cohesive bandage. This is exactly the same stuff if you were to buy Coban or Coflex, but this is a brand meant for animals. It's called Sharp Flex, and I bought these for like 50 cents a roll. My wife tells me that I have way too much of this stuff, and I don't know what she's talking about. I mean, there may be a few bags of it in there already, but 50 cents a roll, pretty cheap. So when I find it, I just get extra. And that's someplace people don't really think to look for first aid stuff, is at the pet store or the veterinary supply store. And sometimes you can find stuff cheaper. Another place to look when you're buying things is non-medical options. So some things got really hard to find in 2020. Masks, gloves, PPE, things were really ridiculously hard to find. I had a lot of gloves already, fortunately, because they were really cheap on Amazon before 2020. But those things got hard to find. And there's other options, though. If you're looking for something like gloves, you can look at mechanics shops for nitrile gloves. Same thing. You can look in cooking supply stores for kitchen gloves. You can find other options to get the things you need, and it may be cheaper if you just think outside of the medical shopping and look for other places. Next up, medications. So if you're wanting to buy extra things like over-the-counter medications, maybe vitamins, supplements, or over-the-counter stuff like Tylenol, ibuprofen, you can buy a lot of those things in bulk. You could go to Costco and get giant bottles of stuff. The problem with that is those have an expiration date. So if you don't use that in that time, then you're kind of waste of money there. You can save a lot of money, though, by buying generic brands of a lot of things, especially things like Tylenol, ibuprofen, aspirin, those types of things, even Benadryl, Dayquil, NyQuil. You can find generic brands, all of those things, and it's a lot cheaper. We've been shopping at Costco before, and they've had like multivitamins, children's multivitamins, or prenatal vitamins that were, buy a bottle, get one half off kind of thing. So those are really good ways to get extra of something that you're going to use or you're going to need if you just want to have some extra at home. Now, prescription medications can be a little trickier because you often can't just go and buy extra of a prescription medication that you need. And a lot of folks need prescription medications to function. Some things are just going to be really difficult to keep any sort of supply or to plan ahead with. Things like insulin that you can't really store in a first aid kit or a counter, and it can be very expensive anyway. There are options for that. Some folks buy medications from over the border. That's something you want to do. That's fine. If you have insurance that is paying for your medications, you can refill your medications. If they're being filled every month, you can refill them usually 2 or 3 days before that prescription is empty. And sometimes, depending on your insurance, up to 4 or 5 days, you can request a refill. Now, there are some medications like narcotics where they are very controlled and you cannot do this. But for other medications, often your insurance will approve refills for medications 2 days before your prescription ends. So if you are keeping track of your medications, you get a 30-day prescription and you call that prescription in at 28 days and you pick it up, then you have 2 days of that medication. And if you do that every single month, and that can really be life-saving if something happens. If there's some sort of disaster, if there's storms, if the power is out, if you can't get to a pharmacy, and you have that 2 extra days or 4 extra days or a week, then that can get you through a tough time. It's not really a stockpile, but if you are taking prescription medications, that's one way to make sure that you are planning ahead. With any medications, though, prescription or otherwise, you need to look very closely at expiration dates. So even over-the-counter medications like pain medications, they have an expiration date, and you got to watch and replace them. It's a good idea to have a yearly checkup, same as you do with your smoke detectors in your house, and you check all the batteries. Do that with your first aid kits. That's something that this box helps me do. When I go through the first aid kits and I take out things that are expired, I go to the box and put new things in, and then I see, hey, I'm getting low on, bandages or gauze or tape or whatever it is, and then I can go look on Amazon and find whatever it is that I need. Another thing that can help you save money is to remember that you don't need fancy bags and fancy equipment. I got that big fancy bag for my big kit. I didn't buy those for those kits. Those were bags that I had either from work or from other things that I was doing, so I just used them. Most of my first aid kits go in gallon Ziploc bags. I can see everything in there. It's easy to access, easy to get into. This is just fine. You don't have to spend money on fancy bags and packs and first aid stuff. You can use a Ziploc. And last, just plan and don't exceed your budget or your abilities. But get the things that you need for your first aid kits, plan those out, do your shopping. When you find good deals like cohesive bandage for 50 cents, buy a couple rolls, spend a few dollars, and rebuild your stockpile so you can replace that expired stuff when you need to. That's pretty much it. Those are my thoughts. You guys let me know. What do you do with first aid stuff? Do you keep a stockpile? Do you keep 6 months worth of multivitamins? Are you one of these folks that stockpiles Tylenol and then forgets that it's in the cupboard until it's been expired for 3 years? Let me know. Thank you so much for watching. I appreciate you. If you enjoyed this, you can click the little thumbs up. If you want to see other videos, you can hit subscribe. Thanks for watching. I will see you next time.